Hi, in this video I'm going to go over a bit of the process for creating a custom metahuman. So in Unreal 5.7, the first thing that I did was create a metahuman character node. So I just right-clicked in the content browser and created a metahuman character node. So here I already have one, so I'm just going to double-click and open that. So the first thing that you need is a model of your character with a topology that matches the metahuman characters. And you can do this in a number of ways. You can create a model and then you can transfer the topology. That can be a bit of a tedious process with additional sculpting usually needed. So the way that I have approached it is to actually take a metahuman model and sculpt it into my character. So the first thing that I started with was some concept art, and I had like the front and side of the character as a reference. So after a lot of sculpting, this is the finished version of the model. And so the things to pay attention to here are the LOD0 versions of the body, head, teeth, and eyes. Eye left and eye right. These are the most important things, the most important parts that you want to sculpt and position correctly. So what I've done is made sure to keep the topology the same, the vertex order the same, and I didn't change the pivots. So any changes that I made to the model was either using lattices for large, broad sort of changes, and then using Maya sculpting tools. Now you can certainly use Blender, you can use ZBrush, you can use different tools like that, whatever you're most comfortable with. But at the end of it, you want to make sure that the mouth bag and things fit over the teeth. You want to make sure that the eyes fit correctly within the eyelids. You don't really have to worry about the eyelashes, eye edge, or cartilage so much. These will actually get made when you go into Unreal. So really, we're not worried about the eye shell, saliva. Just make sure that your teeth, which includes the gums and kind of the throat, that looks correct. It's good to sculpt the inside sort of mouth bag so that it fits around the teeth. And it's important to place the eyes correctly, but you want to keep the pivot the way that it already was, at the origin. Okay, and so one thing that I did for this character, because metahumans, they're all adults, there was a baby that I had done for a previous project, and I'd used Houdini's topo transfer to basically take a metahuman and apply its topology to the shape of a baby model. And so blend shaping the adult model to a baby to some percentage was a better starting point for me to sculpt out this character. Anyway, once you have this all built out, you can export these models. So we just want the body, head, teeth, eye left, eye right. And we're going to export from whatever program you're using as an FBX. You can export selected, save it out, and then in Unreal Engine, just import the FBXs in, and you can just right click, import to current folder, choose your FBX, import it, and then you have the models. Then when you have your metahuman character open up in Unreal, you'll choose body, conform. So you can start with the preset if you want, and then choose body, conform from template, and you can choose the body and head meshes. And by clicking on conform, you're going to get the shape of the model to match what you have. brought in here. And so first you click on conform. And then one of the problems that I had with this character, so now to look at the bones, let's just turn that off and on again. And once you create the rig, you'll see kind of where the joints are. Now, because this character's proportions are so different than the adult metahumans, the joints were not being created correctly. So there was a problem with the spine, there was a problem with the positioning of the joints for the hands and things like that. So it's definitely very important to click on the eyeball, turn it on and off if you need to, and just take a look at the bones for the body and make sure that Unreal has positioned them properly. And so in my case, because the positions were not correct, I ended up using in Maya. So in Maya, I ended up using Metapipe to position the joints properly, and Metapipe actually gives you an FBX for the body and an FBX for the head. And so instead of just the static mesh, like these models unrigged, I exported those. Now by exporting those to Unreal, the advantage that I had was I could import joints. And so because this FBX has the joints and so does this head, then you can click on import joints and it imported these joints in the correct positions. Import helper joints I left unchecked because I wanted this process in Unreal to figure out where to put these other helper joints on the skin. So to put it on like the surface of the body. And so I felt like that part worked well, but the positioning of like the leg joints, the spine joints, that was a problem. And so I used both Metapipe and then also some manual editing by just moving around the pivots of the joints in Maya to get the joints to be exactly where I wanted. And then I was able to import that in here. And then for the head, similarly, I used conform and from template. And I turned off the alignment options because the head for my character was already in the correct place. I didn't want this process changing where the position or rotation or scale of the head would be. And so for the mesh, I chose my same Metapipe head. And in this case, I wasn't really using the joint positions from here. I just clicked on conform and then it fit the head to my character. And then, you can adjust all of your texture settings and things in here and your teeth. And then you can choose hair for the character if you want to use one of the preset Metahuman hairstyles, which is very helpful. And so this is really where I brought in like the eyebrows and the eyelashes and all that just by choosing these presets in here. And once you have your character and the texture and everything looking the way that you want, you can go to assemble and you'll do two different steps here. So first, you want to export it for use in Unreal. So create like an Unreal blueprint and all of the data assets that you need for the character. I chose to use a UE optimized character and then just set the quality to high. And then here it will create a character with this name in the game Metahumans folder within your Unreal project. Now, if you want to get like all the bells and whistles, you can certainly use the UE Cine Complete. For my use case, it actually made more sense to just do UE optimized, and I didn't really notice a difference in terms of what I needed. So, it may tell you to download texture sources if you haven't, and that'll download the textures for you, and then you have to create the full rig before you can export your character out. Okay, so now that the character's been rigged, I can click assemble and then I've already done that, so I won't do it again, but here under Metahumans, it created this folder. And in that folder, we have a blueprint for the character, we have the grooms, the face setup and textures, as well as the body. So you have like skeletal mesh and all of that, materials and things. And so then the next step for me was to do the DCC export. And you just choose your output folder and hit assemble. So back in Maya, we have this Metahumans plugin, and so you definitely want to install these Metahumans tools for Maya. We're going to be using quite a few of them. And so character assembler, now that we've exported data for a DCC package, then we are going to assemble this character. So these are the settings that I use. I use the combined skeleton. So click on assemble, and it's going to take those pieces and put together the character in Maya. So once that process is done, you'll have a character in Maya that has the face rig and has joints for the body, and all of that is skinned and put together. So like if I were to just test it a little bit, you can see it's got like skinning and all of that in here now. So the way that I work with these characters is I like to animate them in Maya. And so I have my own custom tools for creating body control rig that's available on my website. So with a single click of a button, I can take this character and create a body control rig, and then it'll be ready to animate. Now this character is significantly smaller than an adult, so I'll make a few adjustments. So these controls, they come in pretty big. So I can just select all the controls in this group, and I have this scale control curves kind of utility, and I can just scale them all down to like 0.4. And then if I want to scale any of these controls individually, I can adjust them the same way. So now I have a character that's ready to animate. So what I like to do with that is save the file. So I'll save a version of this. I'll save it as version 1. And then I like to create like a little publish folder where I have a versionless one, and that's the one I will reference into my animation files. So when I make updates to the rig, I can simply update the sort of published version, the one that gets referenced into animation shots, and animators can always pull in the latest version that way. Now, this character is ready to animate, but there's still additional work to do. Because the proportions are different, there are a lot of corrective joints and corrective shapes for both the face rig and for the body. Now those have to be corrected. So when we exported out of Unreal Engine for a DCC package, and then we used the character assembler to load those files in and process them and create a scene file for Maya, we basically were able to get the building blocks we need to rebuild our character. So we're going to use those same building blocks in the pose editor. So this is the Metahuman pose editor. I'm going to import from DNA. And so this is the folder where I exported for DCC from Unreal Engine. And I'm going to pick the body DNA for this character. Just open that up. So once it finishes loading, we have all of these different RBF solvers for different joints. So for example, let's look at the calf and look at basically the corrective joint positions for each rotation angle of a particular joint. This is what we're going to correct. So I'm going to choose this first one and just do edit selected. And I'm going to move this over so we can see it at the same time. So let's hide the other body models, so we don't need all of them. We're going to hide these other LODs, and we're just going to keep 0, which is the highest resolution version. And I'm going to go in the side view and take a look at this one. So we're already editing this first calf left UE RBF solver. And so in here, we have the default pose, which is just as we can see. And then now I'm going to double click on this 120-degree pose. And here I have all the joints that are being manipulated by this. So these are the kind of corrective joints, the ones that we see around the main joint. So these joints go into different positions based off of the angle here as a way of correcting the shape. Now, because my character is vastly different than an adult-sized metahuman, there are things that need to be corrected here. So I'm going to grab this calf knee back, and we can see it here. And I'm just going to use this transform tool. And I like to use basically like these planes to help me, keep the position that I'm changing to like just these two axes. So I'm just making a slight adjustment there. I'm going to click update because I like the new position of that joint. So when the calf is rotated to this angle, this is the new position for this knee back joint. Similarly, I'm going to double click on this 90-degree angle one and just move the same joint, update, go to 150, move this one, update, and go down the list. Okay, so it's not too difficult. And you can always take a look at things in other viewports as well to make sure that you like the shape. But once you're happy with that, you can click on Finish Editing. I've tried messing with mirroring, but because undo didn't really seem to work, I would advise maybe not doing that. And I just double clicked on default again to go to the default pose. So I'm going to go through each of these and just correct any joint positions that I need. And, click update and then finished on here. And once I'm done with all of that, then I can export to DNA. So after correcting everything, I don't want to save over this one. I want to create like a new version, whether it's like body DNA 2 or whatever. Use that and then go back to Unreal Engine, go back to this Metahuman character node. I'm going to remove the rig so that I can edit things again. And then this time when I go to the body, I'm going to conform. I'm going to choose the import DNA option. And so I would import the DNA file that I updated and use that to update this character. And we'll do the same for the face as well. So let me show you that process in another window. I just created a blank Maya scene, and we'll use the Metahuman expression editor to edit face shapes. So again, we're going to start with the head DNA that came from the DCC export. Okay, so I choose my DNA file and then I click on expression poses. And so if this is where we have all the different expression poses for this character's face. So the first thing that I want to do is click on this button, Assemble Scene. And so we're going to create a new rig editing scene. Just like we did for the body, we created like a temporary kind of file in the Maya so that we could edit the RBF joint positions. So for the facial expressions, we're going to do the same thing. Now that it's created the file for us, we'll see that we have our face GUI up there. Now because this character is a lot shorter, we may want to actually move this GUI a little bit closer. So I'll just grab this group and pull down this UI over here. Okay, so now we have our character and our facial GUI. And so one of the expressions that often needs to be fixed, so I can just search for like eye and then find eye blink, double click on the eye blink and take a look at that in here. So now that I've double clicked on this eye blink, okay, so I see there's this head in this edit group. I can hide that. There's another one down here in that same group called sculpt head. This is the one that I'm going to be sculpting on. Now, if you can see here, the eyelids, when they're closed, there's an intersection with the eyeball. Eyeball's poking through, and there's also this sort of weird wrinkle or shape that I want to smooth out. So I can click on this sculpt head and go to my sculpting tools, and I can double click and adjust the settings, the size and strength in here. And I can use shift to kind of smooth things out a bit. And then I can just use the left mouse button to pull out the eyelid a little bit, smooth it a little bit more. And I'll do the same on this side. Just with shift, I'm just smoothing a little bit, and then I'm pulling this shape out. Okay, so I can check out the shape. I can make whatever other adjustments I want. And then, once I'm happy with it, I can click on this button, edit selected expressions. So after editing the shape, I can go in and then run ML joints matching. So what that's doing is each of these shapes is created by a combination of positioning the joints and also adding a little bit of a blend shape to get like that final bit of that precise shape that you've created. So we'll run this, we'll say yes, and then we can keep going and we can edit any of these expressions that we want. And once we're done, we're going to save Metahuman DNA. And again, I'm going to not save over the original one that I had, but save like a version 2. And once we have that, we'll go back in here. So I would choose those 2 DNA files in here. And then I'd click on conform. And then I'd go in here and same thing for the face. Choose this head DNA again and import. And so, as you can imagine, as you find different issues that need to be corrected, you may find yourself going back and forth several times doing this. And then you can assemble the character, create the full rig, export for DCC again, and then you can also export your UE optimized, your UE Cine, or if you're working in UEFN, you can export for that. And there you have it. That's how you create your custom Metahuman and how you correct face and body shapes for it. Thank you.